Good afternoon, this is the story of my childhood. Take your tea and listen to the story. You ever look back on something so small, so seemingly dumb, but it still makes you smile years later? Yeah, this is one of those stories. I don't talk about it much, maybe because it sounds ridiculous on the surface. But to me, it was a turning point. A moment I realized I wasn't powerless. I was in 8th grade. 2008, our class took a field trip to the beach. You'd think it would be a fun day: sun, waves, snacks, flirting with the idea of summer, but for me, it was more like surviving enemy territory. I was bullied. Not in the movie-style swirlies and lockers kind of way. More like the quiet psychological warfare that breaks a kid down over time. The name-calling, the whispers, the exclusion. You get used to the sting after a while, but it still leaves bruises. The ringleaders were 3 guys, let's call them Jared, Mike, and Kyle. Classic names for classic jerks. They weren't just mean. They were strategic about it. Picking moments when no adult would see, pushing just hard enough that if I reacted, I'd be the one who looked crazy. That day, they were doing their usual thing, laughing too loud, making accidental jokes at my expense, just enough to ruin the vibe. I kept my distance. Stayed alone for safety. I remember thinking, just get through it. Get home. They can't touch you once the bus leaves. But then something shifted. And I swear it was AI-generated fate or divine comedic timing. So there I was, walking down the beach with a half-warm soda in one hand, trying not to cry in public because, cool 8th graders don't cry. I remember my feet burning from the hot sand and thinking about how much longer I had to endure before we'd be back on the stupid yellow bus. Then I saw it. The guys, Jared, Mike, and Kyle, had gone into the water. Splashing around like they didn't just spend the last 2 hours turning me into a walking punchline. And for once, they were far enough away from their stuff that no one was watching it. Right there on the sand were their towels, bags, and snacks. Including an almost full, family-sized bag of sour cream and onion chips. I swear I heard a choir of angels. No one else was around. The teachers were way down by the boardwalk. My classmates were in little groups playing frisbee or trying to impress each other by fake drowning. It was just me, and their things. And suddenly, something inside me whispered, "Hey, you don't have to take it today." I didn't think. I acted. I picked up the bag of chips. Quietly knelt beside their towels. And I crushed them. Not just a little. I absolutely pulverized those things like my life depended on it. Then, with all the finesse of a bored raccoon, I sprinkled the crushed chips all over their towels, their bags, their shoes, hell, even the top of one guy's hoodie. And then I walked away. Calm. Cool. Casually sipping my off-brand cola like a mafia boss watching the chaos unfold from a rooftop. Except, the real chaos hadn't even started yet. I hadn't even made it 10 steps before I heard them. Seagulls. At first, it was just one. Then 2. Then, it was like someone fired off a gull-shaped flare into the sky. They came in like a white-feathered SWAT team with beady eyes and zero morals. I swear to you, I didn't know seagulls could move that fast. They dive-bombed the area like it was the last food source on Earth. Within minutes, there were at least 50 of them. Screeching, fighting, flapping, pecking. It was chaos. Beautiful, greasy, chip dust-covered chaos. One gull literally snatched a sock from the ground and flew off like it had found treasure. Another was straight up standing guard on Kyle's towel, hissing at anyone who got too close. These birds weren't just eating, they were invested. Territorial. Wild-eyed. And from a safe distance, I stood there watching it unfold like a nature documentary with a vengeance subplot. A couple of kids screamed. Some teacher came running over, waving her arms and yelling something about wildlife safety. But it was too late. Their base camp had become Gull City. And then the boys came back from the water. Oh man. You ever witness someone go through the 5 stages of grief in 30 seconds? Jared hit denial fast, like, yo, who did this? Nah, this isn't happening. Mike went straight to anger, yelling and trying to swat the birds away like he was in a slapstick comedy. Kyle just stood there frozen, a single chip still stuck to his sock, looking like his soul had left his body. I didn't laugh. I didn't even smile. Okay, maybe I smiled a little. But in my heart? That was the first time I ever felt like maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't totally unfair. Watching them flail around, trying to clean chip grease off their towels while dodging aggressive birds, should have been hilarious, and it was, but underneath the laughter bubbling up in my chest was something deeper. Relief. For once, I had control. I wasn't the punching bag. I wasn't the weird quiet kid they got to mess with for fun. I was the guy who sicked an entire seagull squadron on their stuff without even touching them. It felt like justice. Not the kind adults talk about in morning assemblies or cheesy PSAs. This was the kind of justice that came with feathers and screaming and a ruined pair of foam flip-flops. And the wildest part? No one suspected me. Not a single person. I played the clueless card flawlessly. Whoa, what happened over there? I asked some other kid, casually munching a granola bar like I hadn't orchestrated a seagull-based ambush 10 minutes earlier. Someone muttered something about food being left out. Teachers were too busy trying to shoo the birds and restore order. And the guys? They were too humiliated to do anything but blame each other. Watching them argue about whose fault it was while they shook sand out of their chips and seagull poop off their towels, that was my Oscar moment. No speech. Just vibes. But something else happened that day. Something I didn't expect. I walked differently after that. Straighter. Not like I was better than anyone else, but like I didn't owe anyone an apology for existing. It was a weirdly big deal for me. It was the first time I felt seen. Even if no one else knew what I did. I did. So you'd think the story ends there, right? Wrong. The next day at school, something was off. Like, the whole vibe was different. Not just with the bullies, everyone was acting weird around me. Whispers. Side eyes. That awkward, do you know something I don't? Kind of tension that builds in middle school like a cold front rolling in. At lunch, I sat at my usual spot alone, near the corner of the cafeteria where the AC vent buzzed like a dying robot. I was halfway through my sandwich when this girl named Rachel sat across from me. We didn't really talk before. She was quiet, kept to herself, mostly hung out with the art kids. But now she was looking at me like I had just grown a second head. You were the one with the birds, weren't you? I froze mid-bite. What? She smirked. Not in a mean way. More like, impressed? Dude. The seagulls? The chips? It was too perfect. You had a bag of snacks. You walked by their stuff. Then suddenly, boom. Alfred Hitchcock presents. I tried to play dumb again, but something about her gaze made me stop. How'd you know? Rachel shrugged and said, I watch people. You looked different after it happened. Like, lighter. I didn't know what to say. No one had ever really noticed me before, not like that. Not for something that felt smart, or bold, or powerful. And then she said something that still burned into my brain. I think they deserved it. And I think you did more damage than you even realize. She stood up, tossed me an unopened pack of cookies, and walked away like it was no big deal. But to me? That moment changed everything. I'd love to tell you that after that, everything got better. That the bullies left me alone. That Rachel and I became best friends or started passing secret notes. That I finally found my place. But, real life isn't a movie. And even when you win, there's still cleanup. For the next week, Jared, Mike, and Kyle were weirdly quiet. Not friendly, not apologetic, just cold. There was a tension in the air like they knew something happened, but they couldn't prove it. And worse, they couldn't undo it. They started walking around me like I was radioactive. Which should have felt amazing, right? But instead, I started feeling off. Like I had done something wrong. It's so messed up, isn't it? You get bullied, you finally push back in the smallest way, and suddenly you're wondering if you went too far. I couldn't shake this weird guilt. I remember sitting on my bed one night, just staring at the ceiling, thinking, what if I become like them? What if I start liking this too much? That thought scared me. Because that seagull scene? That wasn't justice. That was revenge. And yeah, it felt good. But it also made me wonder what else I was capable of when I got pushed too far. And for a 13-year-old kid with zero confidence and a full tank of rage, that was a dangerous question. But then I remembered Rachel's words. You did more damage than you even realize. She didn't say it like it was cruel. She said it like it mattered. Like it meant something. Like I had power not to hurt people, but to stand up for myself. Even if no one clapped. Even if no one ever knew. About a week after the Great Seagull incident, I was called to the principal's office. I remember the moment perfectly because my stomach dropped so hard I thought it had hit the basement. The secretary handed me a pink slip with Mr. Larkin written in that curly, slightly too friendly handwriting that always meant trouble. I tried to act chill, but inside I was freaking out. Did they find out? Did someone talk? Did Rachel say something? I sat down across from Mr. Larkin, middle-aged, tired eyes, khakis that screamed dad energy. He tapped a folder on his desk and said, "We've had a complaint." My heart was doing gymnastics. Apparently, Jared's mom had called the school. She was furious. Said someone had targeted her son during the beach trip. That his personal belongings were vandalized. That he came home covered in bird droppings and emotionally distressed. Honestly, I was impressed she got bird droppings into an official complaint. But then Mr. Larkin leaned in and said something that caught me completely off guard. We don't have any proof of wrongdoing. But your name came up. My mouth went dry. All I could think was Rachel. She sold me out. But no, he wouldn't say who. Just that someone noticed I was near the towels before the birds hit. And now the school had to look into it, just in case. He didn't accuse me directly. He just let the silence hang in the room like a fog. Like I was supposed to confess out of guilt or nervousness. And for a second, I almost did. I almost said, yeah. It was me. I did it because they made my life hell and I wanted them to feel what it was like to be picked on, even if just for 5 minutes. But I didn't. Instead, I sat up straight, looked him in the eye, and said, I don't know anything about that. Because here's the truth, when you've been bullied long enough, you learn how to survive. And survival sometimes means keeping a secret you're damn proud of. So yeah, the school let it go. They couldn't prove anything. No witnesses. No security footage. No seagull confession, unfortunately. Mr. Larkin eventually gave me the "you're free to go, but we'll be keeping an eye on you" speech and sent me back to class. I thought that was the end of it. But it wasn't. Because a couple days later, I was walking home, backpack digging into my shoulders, earbuds in, trying to drown out the world, when I felt someone behind me. It was Kyle. Not Jared. Not Mike. Kyle. The quietest one of the trio. The one who never said much but always laughed the hardest when I got tripped or insulted. The one I always suspected was smarter than the rest. He didn't say anything at first. Just walked beside me for like half a block in total silence. No threats. No posturing. Just footsteps and tension. Then, out of nowhere, he says, "You did it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. Didn't even look at him. He kept going. "You were the only one who didn't run when the birds showed up. You just watched. Like you were proud of it." That part actually made me flinch a little. Because, yeah, I was proud. But I still said nothing. Then he stopped walking and said, "Jared and Mike think it was some freak accident." I don't. You're smarter than you look. I turned to him then. Just stared. And he said, "You better be careful. People remember things." Then he walked off. Didn't punch me. Didn't yell. Just dropped that little mind bomb and left me standing there with a stomach full of static. It messed with me more than I wanted to admit. Because Kyle knew. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just some funny little revenge story anymore. It was a secret war now. And I had no idea what was coming next. A week went by. Nothing happened. No weird confrontations, no teachers pulling me aside, no seagulls showing up to collect royalties. Just quiet. Too quiet. But then something weird started happening. People were looking at me differently again, but not in the suspicious "did you feed chips to birds" kind of way. It was respect. One day in the hallway, a 7th grader actually moved out of my way. Voluntarily. I almost tripped on my own shoes. Another time, this guy from gym, Carlos, who literally never spoke to me before, gave me a nod. Like we were in on something. It was like my reputation had changed without me saying a word. And then Rachel found me after class. "Did you hear?" she asked, grinning like she knew a secret I didn't. "Hear what?" "People are saying Jared cried on the beach." I blinked. "What?" "Cried. Like, full-on meltdown. His mom came to pick him up early, and apparently, he told her it was because someone hated him enough to call in the birds." She made air quotes and everything. I laughed. I couldn't help it. But then she paused and said, "Kyle's the one who told people." That made me freeze. "Why?" She shrugged. "No idea. Maybe he wanted to shift the power. Or maybe he just wanted to watch Jared squirm." It hit me like a freight train. Kyle knew, and he didn't want revenge. He wanted rebellion. He wasn't warning me that day. He was testing me. The whole "people remember things" line? That wasn't a threat. It was a signal. He was done being under Jared's thumb. And he was watching me because, for once, I'd done what he couldn't. I made them bleed. Without a word. And suddenly, I realized. I wasn't the only one who'd been trapped in a quiet hell all year. Maybe I wasn't the only one who wanted out. It was a Friday. The kind of day where everyone's brain is already on the weekend, and teachers barely pretend to teach. I was zoning out in homeroom, watching the clock like it owed me money, when the intercom crackled. "Attention, students. The beach field trip slideshow will begin in the auditorium shortly." I forgot they were doing that. Apparently, one of the teachers had taken a bunch of photos at the beach and turned it into a PowerPoint for memories or whatever. You know, one of those events where everyone pretends to care but secretly just wants to see if they look cool in any of the pictures. We filed into the auditorium. Lights dimmed. The projector hummed to life. The first few slides were harmless. Kids burying each other in sand. Someone doing a cartwheel. Teachers in bucket hats pretending they weren't having breakdowns. Then came the towel photos. I saw my bullies. Lying on their blankets, flexing, doing their usual peacock nonsense. And then. Next slide. The towels. With the chips. Some hero, had taken a photo right before the birds descended. You could see the crushed crumbs. You could almost see the glint of chaos about to unfold. And then, slide after slide of the seagulls. Flapping. Fighting. Chaos. You could even see Jared in the background of one, half-naked, running with a sandal in his hand like he was fleeing the apocalypse. The auditorium lost it. Laughing. Whistling. One teacher even chuckled and said, "Looks like someone made some feathered friends." But I didn't laugh. Because I knew someone submitted those photos. And I had a feeling I knew exactly who. Later that day, I checked the student newsletter online. Photo credits? Kyle M. He didn't just want to burn bridges. He wanted to burn the whole fake kingdom down. And I wasn't the only one standing in the ashes this time. The next few days were a blur of rumors and weird looks. The pictures had absolutely rocked the school. It wasn't just the kids, even some of the teachers couldn't stop talking about it. Everyone had an opinion about the bird incident, and suddenly, Jared and his gang were the butt of every joke. But here's the thing about power: it shifts, but it doesn't always land where you think it will. I couldn't walk through the halls without hearing a snicker or feeling someone's eyes on me. I thought it would be more about Kyle, but no, somehow, it turned into something else. I was still that kid who let the birds loose. Sure, Kyle made his move, but in the court of middle school opinion, he was still just a quiet, smart kid who'd sat on the sidelines. The real villain, according to some, was still me. It wasn't long before Jared started noticing the shift in attention, too. His usual bravado started cracking. He couldn't take the jokes anymore. People weren't afraid of him anymore. They weren't scared to call him out, to laugh at him. It was like he'd lost all his power. His reputation? Ruined. By a single bag of chips and a flock of birds. But Jared wasn't a victim. Not for long. One afternoon, I was walking home from school when I felt the familiar presence of someone behind me. I didn't even need to look. It was Jared. I braced myself for whatever was coming. "Nice job with the birds, man," he said, voice tight. "You really showed me, huh?" I didn't answer. Just kept walking, trying to act like I wasn't about to combust inside. Jared caught up to me. It was a good move. But don't think you're off the hook just because Kyle's playing his little game. I felt a pang in my chest. What's that supposed to mean? Jared smirked. It means you might have made the first strike, but I'm the one who finishes things. The way he said it? Calm. Confident. Like he knew something I didn't. But there was a tremor in his voice. He was angry. But he was also scared. Then, he did something that made my stomach turn. He handed me a crumpled up piece of paper. I opened it slowly. A photo of the seagulls. A close-up of me in the background, standing a few feet away from the chaos, staring at the carnage like I was watching a war unfold. It was clear enough to recognize. Clear enough to frame. "You're not as invisible as you think," he said. "This thing's not over, dude." He turned and walked away without another word. And that's when it hit me: the war wasn't just between me and him anymore. This wasn't about birds or chips. This was about control. Power. Who owned the truth? And someone was playing a very dangerous game. I spent the rest of that day in a daze. The photo Jared handed me kept replaying in my head. It wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. A calculated move. He wasn't done. And now, it felt like I wasn't just trying to survive middle school anymore. I was fighting for my story. The thing about a secret war is that no one knows they're in it until they're already too deep. And at this point, I was deep. Deeper than I'd ever expected. The next morning, as soon as I walked into school, the weight of it hit me. People were talking again. Not just whispering. Talking. They had seen the photo. And they had questions. There were murmurs in the hallways. "Did you see that picture of him, the one where he was just standing there? It's like he was planning it the whole time." The more I walked around, the more I felt like a spotlight was on me, even though everyone pretended like they weren't paying attention. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when I walked into homeroom. Kyle was sitting in the back, like usual, his head down, scribbling something in his notebook. But today? He wasn't avoiding me. Today, he looked right at me. And then, he slid a piece of paper across the table. Right in front of me. I stared at it for a few seconds before I picked it up. Another photo. But this time, it was different. It wasn't one of me. It was one of Jared. And his face was twisted, eyes wide in fear, in the middle of that chaos. Kyle had photographed the moment Jared's illusion of power had shattered. The moment he became just like the rest of us, vulnerable. Under the photo, Kyle wrote, "Power is never a single thing. It's a game, and everyone plays it differently. You've got your turn. Now it's his." I didn't know what to say. What was I supposed to say? This wasn't just about me anymore. This wasn't about revenge. This was a chess match. A dangerous game where I had no idea who was controlling the board anymore. As I sat there, holding the photo, I realized something else. Kyle wasn't my enemy. He wasn't my friend either, but he wasn't playing against me. He was playing against Jared. And now, I was somehow caught in the middle. But the truth was, I didn't want to be in the middle. I just wanted out. But I couldn't see a way out. And worst of all? I didn't know who was going to be left standing when this game ended. That afternoon, everything changed. It all started with a text. I was sitting in the back of math class, trying to focus on the lesson, which, honestly, was a losing battle. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out discreetly, trying not to get caught. It was from an unknown number. "Meet me at the park after school. I know what you did. If you want to keep this quiet, you'll show up." I felt my blood go cold. For a second, I thought I'd misread it. Maybe it was just some weird joke, one of those pranks you hear about online, right? But then I thought about it. Who else would know? Who else would want to make sure I kept quiet about everything? I looked over at Kyle, sitting in his usual seat, not even glancing at me. And that's when it hit me, it wasn't just Jared who had a problem with me anymore. Kyle had his own agenda. And now, whoever was texting me had something to hold over my head. I had to go. The rest of the day dragged. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think. I kept imagining the worst. Maybe it was someone who had figured out my secret. Maybe it was Jared coming to get me for real. Maybe I was about to walk into something I couldn't escape. Finally, the bell rang, and I bolted out of the school. I tried to walk calmly, but my heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. When I reached the park, there was no one there. At first. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around quickly, bracing myself for whatever was coming next. It was Kyle. But there was something different in his eyes. It wasn't the quiet, calculating look from before. It was something sharper. "I think you should sit down," he said, his voice eerily calm. I froze, instinctively taking a step back. "What's this about, Kyle? What do you want from me?" He chuckled darkly, and it sent a chill through me. "It's not about what I want from you. It's about what Jared wants." I raised an eyebrow. "Jared?" Kyle grinned. "Did you really think this was just between you and me? Did you really think he'd just roll over after you did that?" That's when I understood. Jared hadn't been done with me. He hadn't been done with anyone. He was going to make sure that no one came out on top except for him. And now, Kyle? Kyle was just a tool. A pawn in Jared's game. A game that was about to get a lot more dangerous. "You're already in too deep," Kyle said, his eyes narrowing. "You think you can just walk away from this? From everything? You're part of it now. And if you want to make it out clean, you'll have to do more than just stand there." Before I could respond, Kyle pulled out a phone and tossed it to me. The screen lit up with a message, a link to a video. I clicked it, and my blood ran cold. It was a recording of that day at the beach. The moment the birds hit. But this time, the camera angle was different. It wasn't a photo. It was a video. And someone had filmed the whole thing. And there I was, standing in the background, watching it unfold like I was the mastermind. The worst part? The sound. The laughter. The mocking tone of Jared and his friends in the background, all of them laughing like they were watching some sick comedy. And right before the birds hit, there was me, standing motionless. I hadn't even known someone was filming. Kyle's voice broke through my thoughts. You really want to go back to being the kid who's invisible? Or are you ready to stop pretending? I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do. The video was the nail in the coffin. I was caught. This wasn't just about getting back at Jared anymore. This wasn't even about me. This was about control. And suddenly, I realized I didn't have it. I couldn't breathe. That video? It was more than a threat. It was leverage. I was trapped. No matter how I tried to spin it, there was no way out. If that video got out, my life would be over. I'd be the punchline for the rest of middle school. People wouldn't just laugh at me. They'd think I was complicit. And worst of all? I knew Jared was behind it. This was his game now. And he had no intention of letting it end. I turned to Kyle, whose face was unreadable. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice almost shaking. Kyle didn't flinch. He just stared at me, cool as ever. I told you. You're part of the game now. Jared knows about the birds. He knows about the control you had. But that video? That's your new life unless you do something about it. Do something about it? What am I supposed to do? He took a deep breath. You want to play? Fine. You've got two choices. 1. Let the video out. Let Jared have his fun. Or 2. You take back control. You expose Jared for what he really is. You turn the tables on him. You show everyone what he's been hiding. My mind was racing. Part of me wanted to do nothing, to pretend I could forget this ever happened. But another part of me knew that wasn't possible. Not anymore. If I didn't do something, I'd always be that kid who got eaten alive by a bunch of birds. But if I did do something? If I exposed Jared? It wouldn't be just a revenge fantasy. It would mean fighting fire with fire. It would mean becoming just like him. And in that moment, I wasn't sure which was worse. What's it going to be? Kyle's voice broke through my thoughts. You going to be the hero? Or the coward? I stared at the video again, my heart pounding in my chest. I could already hear Jared's laughter in my mind. His smug smile. The way he'd look at me like I was nothing. No. I couldn't let this happen. Not again. I'll expose him, I said, finally finding my voice. The words tasted like steel on my tongue. But it was the only choice I had left. Kyle gave me a nod, like he'd been expecting that answer. Good. But it's not enough just to show the world the truth. You've got to make sure Jared knows you did it. You've got to break his hold on this school. I felt the weight of his words. This wasn't going to be easy. It was going to be brutal. But I had no other choice. The next few days were a blur. Everything felt like it was happening too fast, but at the same time, it felt like I'd been preparing for this moment for years. It was all about timing. About making sure I did this right. I wasn't just going to expose Jared. I was going to make sure the entire school knew who he really was. The real Jared. Not the confident, untouchable king of middle school, but the scared little kid hiding behind a facade. The hardest part was getting everything in place. I knew the video was already in Kyle's hands, but that wasn't enough. I had to make sure it went to the right people, teachers, principals, the students who would listen, and, most importantly, Jared himself. The first person I went to was Rachel. She'd seen the change in me. She knew something had shifted, but even she hadn't realized how far I was willing to go. I showed her the video. Her eyes widened. You're serious, huh? I nodded. This isn't just about me anymore. This is bigger. He can't keep getting away with it. She was silent for a moment, thinking it over. Okay. Let's do this. We made a plan. The next day, we'd sneak the video into the principal's inbox. An anonymous tip. And once that happened, there was no turning back. Jared's world would collapse. The morning of the big reveal, I felt a strange calm. I knew it was going to hurt. I knew it was going to make everything worse before it got better. But as I walked through the hallways, I also felt something else: empowerment. For the first time, I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding behind anyone else's story. I was writing my own. The video went to the principal. Jared didn't even know it was coming. He was too busy running his usual game, making sure everyone thought he was untouchable. That afternoon, the fallout was immediate. Word spread like wildfire. The principal called Jared into his office. Teachers started whispering. Even the students were shocked, exchanging rumors in hushed voices. And then came the public announcement over the PA system. "Attention, students," the principal's voice came through, gravely serious. "A serious matter has been brought to our attention regarding an incident that occurred during the field trip to the beach. Effective immediately, all extracurricular privileges for Jared H. will be suspended until further notice." I couldn't help but feel a rush of relief wash over me. Jared's grip on this school was slipping. The power he'd held over us was finally broken. But that didn't mean I was done. The next day, I stood at my locker, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. Jared had to know it was me. He had to. No one else could have done it. When he finally showed up, it was like a switch had flipped. His anger was pure venom. "You think you won? You think this is over?" I looked him dead in the eyes, standing my ground for the first time. "It's over, Jared. You're over." His hands clenched into fists, but he didn't hit me. He didn't do anything. He just stood there, seething, like a cornered animal. And I watched as the truth of it settled in: he wasn't the king anymore. He was just a guy who'd been exposed. He sneered, but then, without another word, turned and walked away. I don't know how to describe what happened next. It wasn't a victory like I'd imagined. There was no cheering, no applause. There was just the quiet realization that this wasn't about winning or losing. It was about freedom. And maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes, we have to break things in order to build something stronger. Jared thought he had control. But the moment I stopped running, I realized I was the one who'd always held the power to change the game. And there it is. The end of the story. All the pieces have fallen into place, and what's left is a lesson in power, revenge, and what happens when you stop letting fear dictate your life. Hope this story resonates. Thanks for reading.